always a pleasure to be joined in studio by Yankees manager Joe Girardi on the hot stove. And as you sit here today, January 11th, how are you feeling not only about getting through the holidays, but now looking ahead to spring training?
Well, I'm still pretty relaxed. I'm still really involved in the family life and with the kids and the basketball and the soccer and going to a lot of games. But I start to formulate things in my mind, things that we need to cover in spring training. You start thinking about what your lineup's going to be as you move forward and some of the things that maybe you want to do a little bit different than you did last year.
Well, we still want you to stay relaxed, but we're going to pepper you with a bunch of questions here. Heading into the offseason, when the Yankees talked about what their needs might be, and now looking at what you've done, how happy are you with the changes?
I think we've done a really good job. I think one of the areas of concern was an everyday second baseman. We had talked about the Refsnyder-Ackley platoon situation, but you go and get a proven guy in a Starlin Castro who also can move over to shortstop and play that very well when Didi needs a day off, or he becomes your other shortstop if Didi was to go down. You add an Aaron Hicks, who's very dangerous against left-handed pitchers, but is also a switcher who's extremely athletic. I think we addressed some athletic issues as well. Can play center, left, or right, and play them all very well. And then we traded Justin Wilson because, there's some concern about our rotation and the health of our rotation and moving forward. And you can never have too many starters. And you get two young starters, and then you turn around and make a trade and get Aroldis Chapman and add a third closer. And Justin Wilson was very good, had a tremendous year for us. But I think our bullpen's even stronger now.
It's really interesting. The bullpen has always been a strength since you took over as manager. But there's an electricity going into next year, knowing that Chapman can throw 105. And also the idea that where Andrew Miller last year became your closer pretty much all the time, do you think a little more now you'll kind of move some pieces around? Will Chapman be the guy, or will you be able to use, let's say, Chapman one day along with Miller and then Miller with Betances, etc.?
Well, I think we'll go into spring training with Chapman as our closer and kind of use those other guys to do the 7th and the 8th. And, if Chapman needs a day off, we have no fear in putting Dellin or Miller in that situation. Obviously, Miller's done a tremendous job. I think it gives me a lot of options. And the other thing it does is by having the two lefties and Dellin, I can match up better in the 7th and the 8th inning in a sense, like we did with Wilson and Betances. We were more strict. Who was the 7th inning, who was the 8th inning. This year, I think I can move that around a little bit more.
Joe, when Brian Cashman announced the Chapman deal, he talked a lot about how excited he was to get him, but he also brought up the fact that the Yankees had to do their due diligence because of the alleged domestic violence issue out there against Chapman. As the manager going forward, how do you plan? And then also, how do you handle a player who has had an off-the-field issue?
Well, we understand that that's a serious allegation, a serious issue, and we let Major League Baseball handle it, and we'll deal with whatever happens. But I think for all your players and everyone, we're there for them. We're there to walk alongside things through them, to help them through situations. And I think it's my job to be a teacher as well. I mean, on things that we're supposed to do. So I rely on my coaching staff. I rely on other players. We go through issues during the course of a season, and we need to help each other get through them.
People have said it's harder to do that in the spotlight of New York. Is that something you're cognizant of as you talk to a Chapman, let's say?
Yeah, you have to be, because, it's going to be under a lot of scrutiny, and you have to understand that MLB is going to do their due diligence, and we have to handle, whatever takes place as they decide what they're going to do. But we are under a microscope. And in today's world, you can't hide. I mean, with the social media, you can't hide. And so we let our players know that as well.
From a baseball perspective, what is it like to be the manager who knows at some point in 2016, depending on what happens with Chapman, you're going to have Betances, Miller, and Chapman, three guys who can come in, lights out, strike out batters, make a manager's job that much easier. What's that feeling going to be like in the dugout?
Well, your thought is just get me to the 6th inning with the lead. I mean, that's your thought, and your team understands that too. And, the Yankees have had that formula for a long time. I think about 1996 when I came on. That formula was there. Mariano Rivera was the setup guy. Sometimes he went 2. We had Nelson and other guys, Graham Lloyd, and it's just always continued. And Mo was a guy as a closer that was a multiple inning closer at times. And the Yankees have had always a strong bullpen, and I love it because you win the games you're supposed to, and I think that's really important for the psyche of your club.
Let's turn our attention to Starlin Castro. You mentioned the fact that he's aboard now for several more years, can get that continuity with Didi Gregorius up the middle. How important is that these two young guys who are about the same age now can really kind of grow together in pinstripes?
Well, I think it's really important when you have two 25-year-old kids that are going to play up the middle of your infield. You know they're going to be able to play every day. You know they're going to be energetic. You know they're not going to get as tired and give them as many days off. You know, you look at Starlin Castro. I mean, this is a guy that's 25 years old and has 1,000 hits almost already. He has 991 hits. He turns 26 sometime during the course of the season. These are two very good players, and I think they'll feed off of each other.
Joe, when you guys scouted Castro and looked at him and saw him as a fit for your lineup, where are some of the areas that you think he can still even get better? What can he improve upon?
Well, I think he'll continue to improve. And you know, I look at his year last year, and he had a pretty productive year. But I mean, it was a situation there where he was probably always looking over his shoulder because they knew that they had another young shortstop. They actually had two young shortstops. And at some point, there was he was going to be moved, and it was talked about he's going to be moved. We have these other two shortstops. And that's a hard way to play. So I think he'll get really comfortable in New York. I think he'll love playing in New York, the heartbeat in New York. And I think his game will continue to improve. And the one thing that obviously he has to learn is how to play second on a consistent basis. It's so much harder than it was before because of all the shifting. But for him to go to the other side of the diamond when you're shifting on a right-hander will not be a problem. So he has that advantage.
And he seemed very comfortable playing second base for the Cubs. Really embraced it. Maybe some guys wouldn't.
Well, no, I think he did. I think he just wanted to be in the lineup, and I think this kid loves to play. And you look, he's got a very good set of hands. He can turn the double play, and he's got a good arm. So he's a really good fit for us.
You've already mentioned Hicks in the outfield, and he kind of becomes your replacement for Chris Young. But I think he also gives you a little more versatility, probably a better defensive outfielder as well. What excites you the most about Hicks?
Well, I think it is the versatility to where you really don't need to move anyone. You know, you don't necessarily need to move Gardner to center if you're giving Jacoby a day off. You can leave people just where they are. And this guy's very athletic. He's a very good right-handed hitter. And I saw improvements on his left-handed swing as I watched him and watched his approach at the plate. And that really excites me because I think this kid can be a complete player.
Can he help you give Gardner and Ellsbury a little more rest, especially in that second half? Because that's been much talked about, the fact that they faded a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's going to play a lot just because of that. And I think that being a switch hitter, you don't worry about it as much. You know, if they bring in a lefty, okay. If they bring in a righty, we don't care. And I think he's going to get a lot of playing time because of that.